All right, we're going to continue now with subtracting expressions, okay? We're going to do this little chart real quick as an activity to help us with our subtracting rules, and then we'll go into subtracting expressions. So in the chart given, it talks about opposites. Remember, opposites or additive inverse, same thing, is the opposite sign of a number. So if the expression in the first column says 1, the opposite of 1 is negative 1. Now, we know that opposites have a sum of 0, so that means those first two columns, 1 plus negative 1, you're going to get 0. Now, the next one. The opposite of 3 is negative 3. And we know that if I add opposites, 3 plus negative 3, I get 0. All right, the opposite of negative 7 is positive 7. Still, if you have negative 7 and you add a positive 7, you still get 0. The opposite of negative 1/2 is positive 1/2. Again, if you have negative 1/2 and you add positive 1/2, you're still going to get 0. The opposite of x, now that's negative x. So x plus negative x is still 0. Now the opposite of 3x is negative 3x. If you take a positive 3x and you add a negative 3x, you still get 0. Now this one's a little bit tricky. When you take the opposite of x plus 3, you're actually going to take the opposite of everything. So the opposite of x is negative x. The opposite of 3 is negative 3. So it's negative x minus 3. Now watch what happens. If I take x plus 3 and I add negative x minus 3, I'm going to combine my like terms. So I take x and negative x together. Those are my circles. I take 3 and negative 3. Those are my squares. Now if I add x plus negative x, I get 0. If I add negative 3, positive 3, I still get 0. So that's where that comes from. Same thing with when I get to the last one, 3x minus 7. So the opposite of positive 3x is negative 3x. The opposite of minus 7 is plus 7. I'm going to set that up with like terms together. So 3x and negative 3x together. I have negative 7, positive 7. Well, 3x minus 3x is 0x, which is just 0. And negative 7 plus 7 is 0. So 0 plus 0, still going to give you 0. All right, so now that we have the idea of that subtracting opposite signs, you're going to get 0. We are going to go into subtracting expressions. Now, before we begin, I need to talk about the rules for subtracting. When you are subtracting, remember we had 3 key words, which were leave, change, change. We use this for all of our subtracting rules. We are still going to use it today. The only difference is the last change is going to be change it all. Let me explain what that means. You are going to leave the first set of parentheses. Let me actually make this bigger so we can see this. So the 3x plus 5y minus 4. That's the first set of parentheses right here. That you're going to leave that. That's your leave. You are going to change that subtraction sign to a plus sign. That's your change. The last thing is change it all. So I'm going to take everything in this second parentheses and I'm going to change it to its opposite. So 4x becomes negative 4x. Plus 11 becomes minus 11. The biggest mistake people make is they forget to change it all, and they only change the first one, which gives them the wrong answer. All right, so we're going to do our circles and squares now. Now we're just adding. So we're going to circle 3x and negative 4x. I'm going to write those next to each other. So 3x, negative 4x. Write those next to each other. I'm going to put a box around plus 5y. Now, there's nothing like plus 5y, so that's the only thing that's in the box. All right, and then I'm going to use a triangle for the numbers. So I have negative 4 and negative 11. All right, so I'm going to go back to the beginning. 3 plus negative 4. Now, I would highly encourage you to do that in the calculator. Do not guess. You're adding everything with the circles. So 3 plus negative 4 is negative 1x. The plus 5y, you don't have to do anything with that. There's nothing to add. Negative 4 and negative 11, when you add that, you get negative 15. Now, these are all different variables. You cannot combine that any further. That is your answer. So right here, you have negative 1x plus 5y minus 15. All right, we're going to practice this again. So, part A. We are going to subtract. Remember, your rules are leave, change, change it all. So let's do that. We are going to leave 2x minus 3. We are going to change the subtraction to addition. And we're going to change everything in the second parentheses to its opposite. So x becomes negative x. Negative 2 becomes positive 2. All right, so let's do our circles and squares. So I'm going to circle 2x and minus x. I'm going to write that next to each other. And then I'm going to do negative 3, positive 2. So negative 3, positive 2. All right, so let me just remind you that when you have no number in front of that letter, it's actually a 1. So this is 2 plus negative 1, which is 1x. Then we have negative 3 plus 2, which is minus 1. Now, I just want to remind you that 1x is the same thing as just x. So this is actually the same answer as 1x minus 1. But that is your final answer. You cannot add the x and the 1 because they are not like terms. All right, last one. We are going to subtract. Again, remember, our rules are leave, change, change it all. So let's leave 6x plus 3. Change subtraction to addition. Change it all. So 2x becomes negative 2x. Minus 2 becomes plus 2. All right, I'm going to circle 6x and negative 2x. I'm going to put them next to each other. I'm going to do plus 3 plus 2. And I'm going to add. So 6x plus negative 2x, that gives us 4x. 3 and 2 gives us 5. And that's your answer because you cannot